Listen, kids, it's your old emeritus Papa Bear here. Don't plan ahead. Just don't. Oh my goodness! Tell me you were recording that. Tell me that was.
I hit record before I called, so everything is on.
Perfect. Perfect.
So greetings, Skullgateers. I'm Chris Vandyke, president of Skullgate Media and editor-in-chief of our flagship anthology series, Tales from the Year Between. Welcome to Coffee at the Skullgate, an interview series where I sit down and talk to one of the writers whose work has appeared in our books. And today I'm talking to Darius Bearguard, who is one of the writers who helped create our very first anthology, Achten Tan, Land of Dust and Bone, as well as Volume 2, Under New Suns. He also wrote a serialized story based on his characters, West and Riker, that was published on our website. So I'm super happy to sit down today and talk to Darius, who we just normally call Bear. So Bear, how's it going?
Chris, good. How are you?
Good. So my first question is, so introduce yourself. Who are you? Who is Darius Bearguard, Papa Bear? Who are you? What do you do?
My name is Darius, or at least that's my author name, and I'm just going to stick with it. Or just end up calling myself Bear, which is what everybody does.
Right.
Anyway. I'm a 30-something guy from Canada. Live in Western Canada. I work with special needs kids. Nice. Funny enough, I didn't actually start with that. I am a Microsoft certified database administrator. I'm formerly a Microsoft certified systems engineer, although they don't call it systems engineer anymore because engineers got mad when we took the engineer name. So we're not allowed to do that anymore.
You're not really engineers.
No, we're not really engineers. And I get it, but also I still don't know what we call ourselves anymore.
Okay.
And then, I ended up kind of falling into the work by accident. And then by accident, I kind of fell into, writing short stories in amazingly weird anthologies.
Cool. Awesome. So how did you fall into working with disabled? Is it mainly teenagers, or do you work with people of all ages? Or
all ages? I've worked from kids right around 6 or 7 years old all the way to adults who were older. Yeah, I worked with a couple adults who were older than me, actually. So I got my education right around the time the stock market crash happened.
So right around the time there were no jobs.
I went into one interview for just a basic data level or data entry basic level position, and two of the guys I was applying against had masters and one of them had a doctorate. And so they were and I was like, oh, well, I'm not getting this job.
Right, yeah.
So to kind of make a living, I got into retail just to kind of keep my head above water. Climbed up the retail ladder, getting to the executive level, and kind of realized what I had to become and what I had to do to kind of continue to get ahead in that level, and wasn't something I was interested in. And I got a phone call from one of the training officers my uncle used to work with. He was search and rescue, and he was an Army Ranger. Nice. So he gave me a call and he said, hey, I got a bunch of kids. I need somebody to help teach them how to rappel down mountains. You want to help out? And I was like, yeah, sure. So he didn't really explain anything beyond their kids. And when I got there, it was a lot of at-risk youth. It was people who had ADHD, who had been in and out of, drug houses, unfortunately.
Residential facilities and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I did the work and I walked away and I was like, I love this. This is amazing. I love this. And then, that was it. I quit my job like a week later, I think. Nice. And just kind of on a whim. And I walked into an agency and I said, hire me. And they said, sure. And then I've been doing it ever since.
What have you done? You said you fell into sort of short story writing. What sort of writing do you do?
I've been writing since I was a little kid, but it was mostly just kind of a creativity outlet. I had a very overactive imagination, very creative mind. And it was just a way for me to get it out as I was hunting and pecking my way through a keyboard. And then I've just been doing that for years and years upon years and years. Never really thought anything would go anywhere. And then, yeah, one day I saw your tweet on Twitter and I was like, well, it's COVID. What else am I going to do? So, yeah. And then I was suddenly a published author. Yeah.
Awesome,
So
yeah.
what kind of, okay, so sorry to flip this back on you,
Oh,
but
flip
what
it.
inspired
Let's
you
do
to
it.
do it? What
Um,
inspired you to do it? Because I still have trouble. People, when my wife asked me, like, why'd you decide to do it? And I'm like, I don't know.
I
It
don't
seemed
know.
like
Yeah.
something to do at the time.
Good, because that's one of my later questions. Is like, why do you respond to the tweet? So I don't know. I seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
Actually, it's probably about the same reason I started it. I mean, I started it because it was during COVID. I was bored. I desperately wanted to play D&D with my friends, and then I was in a different anthology, the Beneath the Twin Suns, which Renee Gedrin put together, and it was sort of a shared world, but it wasn't quite. And the whole time I was like, I'm having fun, but if I was running this, what I would want to do is.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
and so then I kept having this idea. I'd had an idea for a while to do this big, using the Quiet Year world. And I was like, yeah, what the heck? And so I thought it one day, literally 4 hours later, I just tweeted who'd like to do this. And I was amazed at my inbox being flooded with people saying, yes, please. So, I mean, I think
Yeah.
COVID was just the right time to ask because everyone was sitting around bored out of their skull.
Yeah, no, and I mean that's exactly what was going on with me. So at the time, I had a client living with me. His parents were in kind of high risk jobs, so they had him live with me for a while. And I mean, we had a ton of free time, right? There was just, my afternoons were open, and I just happened to stumble on it on Twitter, and I was like, I mean, I might as well,
Yeah.
let's see what happens. And then didn't expect anything to come of it really. I honestly expected, whatever I came up with, people would be like, all right, well
Whatever.
you can
Yeah.
go home now. We'll see you later. But then no, it worked out.
Yeah, but I don't know if you remember, like my first email. My initial plan was basically do an overblown zine. My idea was I'm going to host it as a
Yeah.
PDF on my website. People can download it for free. If you want to host it, you can host it. I did
Yeah.
not have any idea that it was going to we're going to actually get some paid art and get an ISBN and actually publish it. So yeah,
And I'm thrilled that we did. Like I'm overjoyed that that's kind of where it came from, because
yeah,
I've like it's just such, like, I started looking into it after the second book was published, and there's really not a lot of this kind of shared universe, shared anthology stuff. And I'm like,
yeah.
why not? This is so fantastic.
Yeah,
I, you know, I
yeah, I like to think it is sort of unique. Like I think there's a few other
yeah,
things they do similarish, but it is sort of a horse of its own color,
yeah.
which I think is cool. Yeah, and
No, I think one of the cool things, the thing that I most enjoyed about the project is just the absolute crazy weirdness of it coming together, right? We've got, I mean, especially in Under New Suns, we've got, music from alternate dimensions. We've got people who are exploring kind of like sea worlds of stuff in space.
yeah.
We've got a little girl's book report in there. We've got a stage play. We've got all sorts of stuff, and it's just one of my favorite ones is, I think it's by Bean. She did the kind of NASA space log where it's just we're watching the guy
Oh,
walk
near
into
the
the,
end, like sort of the Major Tom, like
yeah, and I
yeah,
was just like, this is awesome. Like this first of all feels super authentic. As a guy who's actually read these logs, it felt so authentic to
yeah.
me. And then it was just a really fun thing to kind of read. Just this transmission log back and forth.
No, that's what I've liked about both of them is really, and that's I think having a place where there's pieces that wouldn't fit in any other sort of book.
No,
Right, there's nowhere else
exactly.
you just like. There's nothing where it's a submission. Please submit us a 500-word NASA log that really no one in their right mind, except for a
Yeah,
super nerd, wants to read. Because frankly, it's so wonky you can barely even read it. But it's like, yes, there's people that want to read those things. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts because like
hmm,
Elvira comes up with ideas that I would never in 1,000 years come up with. And they're not
crazy
better or worse.
ideas.
They're just so different that then when you put them
Yeah,
together, you get this new energy of like, I know someone's doing hard boiled noir, someone's doing modernist poetry, and then you smash them
yeah,
together.
yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was just so fun, and I loved using some of Elvira's like his music, the kind of musical things. I inserted that into a couple of the webisode stories, and I was just like,
Mhm.
yeah, this is really fun. It's just a nice little cool piece, and it's a song. There's a song. It exists in our thing, and so I'm going to use that song. That's just really cool.
Yeah. And I like his management. One of my sort of inspirations was like I love the appendices to the Lord of the Rings. And especially you get to some of the appendices where it's like, not like the stories, but it's like, here is the Dwarven languages, and I'm going to give you 2 pages on the various modalities of the nouns during the Finian's reign, and you're like, that is for someone, half the world, or not half, 99% of the world is bored to tears by that. That's exactly the sort of stuff which excites me, and I think obviously excites people that like this project as well.
One of my favorite video games was Metal Gear Solid, and it's something ridiculous like 5,000 pages of just random background information that you don't really need to know, but you can spend forever playing the game, going through and reading it. And I absolutely did. And it totally enriched the game for me. And then my friends would be like, oh, so did you beat the game over the weekend? I was like, no, I haven't finished reading the appendices yet. I might get to it this Friday. We'll see.
I've been too busy reading this log to actually fight the soldiers.
Yeah, exactly.
So on that note, like we said, like we have such a disparate group of people, and you've been to this twice now. What's been your approach when it came to sort of the world building itself? Like when it's sort of your turn and you're looking at everything else, I was like, what was your just thinking when it came to adding to that crazy stew?
So the first time I was pre-preparing like entries, like, okay, I'm going to maybe do this, and I've got some stuff pre-prepared, so that way when it's my turn, I'm just ready to go. And that went right out the window immediately. That was a useless strategy, because all of a sudden something crazy would happen, and somebody would suggest something that I'm just like, wait, what? What happened? And I'm like, okay, I've kind of got to change everything, and then here we go. And then for me, that was the first book, and then for the second book, I was like, you just got to be ready to go with the flow, and you've got to what would happen here that would just blow your mind, right? And like what would be crazy? What's going to throw everything into turmoil? And for the second one, I was like, we didn't just jump to a new location, we've jumped to a completely different quantum realm. What is everybody going to do with this, right? And it was like, oh wow, so this is a thing. And then also, now I've got space sharks, and I'm like, where did the space shark come from? And I'd originally had this whole idea of setting up a criminal conspiracy to kind of go with things, and that was my original plan. And then, just crazy stuff happened, and I was like, sure, why not? Let's see.
I might need to excerpt just your beginning of the answer to play. Just maybe that should be part of the training video for future ones. It's like, don't plan too far ahead, because you're going to have an idea.
Don't listen, kids. It's your old emeritus Papa Bear here. Don't plan ahead. Just don't. No, I remember, especially in the first book, I was trying to stick to a cookie cutter of kind of what I expected. Like, so I think in the first one, when we were trying to like come up with the resources, I'd come up with these giant ants, right? And so this is the thing when we're going to do this thing. And I had planned to do something involving the giant ants, and I had all these ideas. But then wild and crazy stuff started happening, and there's a giant tree. What's with this giant tree? We live inside the rib cage of a dead animal? What? And so then, I was like, what's happening here? And then, we have the Craven aren't really bad guys anymore. I'm like, what do you mean they're not bad guys anymore? What? I can't believe this. And so then I just started to realize, I was like, there's no point. You got to ride with the craziness, throw in some craziness yourself, and then try to make soup at the end of it.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, I find it fun, it's part of like the embracing that chaos of seeing what other people do with your craziness. I mean, you suggested the ants. The ants became like that is the iconic thing. Like if there's one tattoo, I was in Achten Tan, it's the god tree on one shoulder and like the ant on the other. But then people take that ant and they just go crazy with it.
And that was my favorite thing too, especially with the ant thing. So I had the antlers were it's giant ants. They're like cows, whatever. Yeah. We move on, right? No, they became like a major figurehead inside of this thing. And we have, different diatribes that are using these things, and we have soldiers, and now they're mounts riding into battle. And I'm like, okay, this got way cooler than I expected it to. Sweet.
Yeah, that's one of the fun things. Sort of that surrendering control over the thing that you've created, and then letting someone else do something amazing with it, and then you can pick it back up. It's it's like a good game of football or something, some good sport game where it's like the
Yeah.
team works as a whole. And I've been really
No.
happy. It's been amazing. 2 times now it's worked. It's just, you get a good group of strangers together, and as long as
Yep.
everyone wants to cooperate, it seems like it's going to work.
Yeah. It's something too. Like when you were talking about it, it feels like it shouldn't work, right? Like it feels like, no, this is going to be a problem. You have 30 cooks in a kitchen. And then for some reason, somehow at the end of the whole thing, if everybody's willing to participate, it's like, wow, this really did work. This is fantastic.
Yeah, and I love it. Each time that we've come up with enough material that we could write books and books and books. Like every time I end, I have like so many story ideas that I don't have time to get to.
So this was my thing too with, when I first, and I think we talked about this at some point or another, where the kind of original kind of viewpoint I had of Under New Suns was a thing a week thing like Star Trek or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then by the time it was over, I was like, no, there are so many more stories to be told here. This is such a cool thing. There's so many things that I want to explore. What happened to the guy in the cloud? Like he disappeared, but what happened to them? Like what's going on with this? What about this? We got all this space we need to explore. What about these planets we created? How neat would that be if we went to go have a look at that? And so, yeah, it does create this fantastic lore-filled world that you could just go nuts in, I think, for forever.
Yeah, there are definitely loose ends hanging out there, but that's also in a way that the book does mimic a little more like real life than a
Yeah.
strictly plotted plot in that sense. There's there's
exactly
a few threads that we never picked up, but that doesn't mean they're not out there somewhere.
Yeah, it doesn't mean there's not an option for somebody else to pick them up down the road, right?
Right. So we've actually, just by rambling, got through about half the questions I was going to ask you. This is working great. So, what are writers who have inspired you throughout your life? What are those books or creative people that have just sort of sparked either just you liked reading or inspired your own writing or both?
So, first author I really got attached to was probably Stephen King. Mm-hmm. So I'm a notoriously slow reader.
Which is good because Stephen King notoriously writes very thin, short books.
Yeah, he really does, and so it's great because I don't have to remember a million things. I can pick up one of his short story things and go, "This was great." It took me a whole month to get this short story done, but I remembered the whole short story. This is awesome. And so Stephen King is probably one of the first ones to come to mind. Just his kind of visceral descriptions of kind of landscapes and what's going on, and not just visual descriptions of the world, but also of people, right? He uses like anti-stereotypes. I don't know how to phrase it, but he comes up with this imagery that you're just like, yeah, this is not a normal stereotype, but I absolutely understand who this person is that he's talking about, right? I've got this image of it, right? And I love that. The other one is going to be the exact opposite as far as, is it short, would be Tom Clancy, who writes these massive brick novels you could bludgeon someone to death with. He just that spycraft, the conspiracies and all of that stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, I love this. I love this kind of stuff. And so there's actually kind of like little pieces of that for me. So little pieces of like that inspiration from Stephen King kind of went into my first one, The Sandrunner. Mm-hmm. And then for the second one, I've got kind of that Tom Clancy. There's a spy thriller kind of going on in the background here. There's political stuff happening here. And for me, I was like, yeah, I like both of those. Cool. So yeah, those would be favorite authors as well as inspiring authors.
Awesome. Outside of reading, like where do you draw inspiration from? And I know I keep asking this, trying to get different ways. I don't want to ask that terrible question, which is where do you get your ideas? Because the answer is I don't know. Like no creative person can really tell you where they get their ideas. But what are things that like inspire you to like just go home and write? Or you've got
like almost anything. Like I have these weird inspiration moments where I'm walking along and I see something and I go, man, what if that guy was a spy? Like there was one, there was one day I was walking home and there's this guy, and so you expect little kids to be pulling along little red wagons. You expect that.
Right, yeah.
That's part of every day. But then there was this 30-something guy pulling along a little red wagon, and there's no little kids around, and he's just trolling along, and I'm like, what's up with that guy? And then I went home and I had this entire body snatcher
What's his
thing.
Story, right?
I had this body snatcher thing where these aliens came and they saw a little kid doing it, and they were like, "Oh, that's what we're supposed to do." See, the boy kid, he was pulling the wagon, so I'm going to pull my own wagon, and he's trying to fit in, thinking like this is normal. And so, I wrote this entire little short story about this, and I was like, yeah, this is great. I'm never going to do anything with this ever again, but this is great. It was, I have it from one of my favorite short stories, which I'm going to be releasing on my website pretty quick here, actually was inspired by a sandwich. And that's all I'm going to tell you about it.
Okay.
It was inspired by a sandwich. And that's where the inspiration came from. Yeah. I think it's just a matter of, for you, for anyone, it's like, I don't know, like it just kind of depends on how open are you to the process, right? Are you hunting for inspiration, or are you allowing kind of inspiration to kind of come into you? And for me, I don't hunt for it that often, but it randomly happens where I'm just like, oh, and then I've written a thing.
Yeah, I suppose writers, as people, are always telling stories in our mind, and I guess like that, like we're looking around, it's like, what's the story here? What's the story here? What's the story of that building, that car? What's the story to that car? Sandwich. What's the story about the sandwich? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and just keep asking that question, and there's a story hiding behind everything.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah. The asking the question. I think that's a perfect way to put it. Is my inspiration comes from asking questions. I see something and I ask a question about it, and I think that was nice. Thank you, Thank you, Chris. That was perfect. Just thinking
out, it's like there's so often in our society we have this dichotomy between sort of the sciences and like the arts, but in many ways it's both looking at the world and asking questions. And like scientists are sort of like, why does this happen? And this, that the writer is, why could it happen? What's the possible weird answer to this?
What are the several dozens of explanations that could possibly go?
Like, I know it's not aliens, but what if it was?
Oh, what if it was?
What if it was? All right. So actually, I've got to get my kid to bed in a little bit, so I'm going to move on to my lightning round.
Ooh.
So the lightning round, just a bunch of questions which you are supposed to answer quickly without hemming and hawing too much.
Okay.
Maybe it's like a personality test, whatever bubbles up first.
I got it. I'm ready.
All right. And so we touched on this a little, but I'll want a title for this. What is your favorite book?
4 Past Midnight.
Okay. What is your favorite band?
Ooh. AC/DC, Garth Brooks, or Nickelback?
What was your favorite book to have read to you when you were a kid?
I'll Love You Forever. I'll Love You for Always.
Oh. What's your favorite takeout dish?
Oh, wait, no, that's too complicated. Okay, so here's the thing. Burgers, only because most restaurants can't screw up a burger, but it's not my favorite dish. But if I'm ordering from a place and I want a good meal, I want to a reasonable guarantee I'm going to enjoy this, it's a burger.
It's a solid bet. Okay, so not favorite, but a solid bet. All right, Marvel or DC? I think your shirt might be a indicator.
Yeah, sure. Marvel.
Okay. Yeah. That is the correct answer, sir. All right, waffles or pancakes?
Waffles.
Whiskey,
no, wait. Is there fruit? Is there fruit?
Oh, sure. Yes.
Okay, waffles.
Okay, so if fruit, we got a flow chart.
Yeah,
if fruit, then waffles.
If fruit, waffles. If no fruit, pancakes.
I thought that's fair. I think waffles, you can put all the stuff on them.
Yeah, you put the stuff in, and it's held inside of there.
My daughter's shouting waffles from the other room. Yeah! There's only one right answer in her mind. It's never pancakes. Whiskey, beer, or wine?
Ooh, whiskey.
Okay, also the correct answer. Do aliens exist?
Yes.
Okay, will humanity be around in 100 years?
Honestly, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, all right.
I mean, I would like us to be around.
I'm hoping I'll be
but
here.
Also, as I look around at the 2019 to 2021, I'm like, maybe not.
We're not the hamburger of the takeout dish. We're not a sure bet at this point.
No, we are not a sure bet.
So I'd give us a 50-50 maybe. All right. So then the last thing I like to do is my favorite thing on podcasts is endorsements or I think the pop culture happy hour is the what's making you happy this week. What is something that you've either seen, watched, listened to, eaten, done in the last week that you could sort of recommend for other people because it was just making you happy this week?
So 2 things. One of them was Mortal Kombat. So if you grew up as a kid and you played Mortal Kombat, the Mortal Kombat movie is exactly what you want it to be. There's one really boring character that nobody cares about, and I get it. But outside of that one really boring character, it's a fantastic movie. It's just people killing each other. It's awesome.
I have a visceral memory of the first time I played Mortal Kombat in a stand-up arcade in Phoenix, Arizona while visiting my cousin, and it blew my little 11-year-old mind with all the blood and the skulls.
So my visceral memory is my cousin sneaking the Sega out of the house because he knew my parents would never let me play Mortal Kombat. And he snuck it out and he hid it inside his sleeping roll and he produces it and then he produces the Mortal Kombat cartridge and I'm like, so we played that for
all night.
From midnight to 6 a.m. and then passed out. Second thing, going to that Marvel Comics thing, Sam Wilson is the new Captain America.
I haven't watched the last episode, so don't tell me too much. I mean, I know he's going to. That's not a spoiler. I know he's going to be the next Captain America.
That's not a spoiler. Okay,
before you go.
The last episode, so inspiring. It was amazing.
Good.
I remember, so as a guy who kind of grew up, I'm a huge Marvel Comics nerd. Bucky Barnes as Captain America in the comic books was my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And I was super annoyed that they gave Sam Wilson the shield. But then after watching The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it's so good. It's so perfect. Anthony Mackie, Sam Wilson as Captain America for life, forever. It was amazing.
Awesome. I need to get to that last episode before I hear too much.
You really do. I can't believe you've made it. How, sir? Do you not understand the internet? There's spoilers. They're everywhere.
I've had a few days. That's the one I'm missing. I caught up on everything else, but I have to just on it. I wasn't super excited about the show before it came out. It's just Winter Soldier to me was a little more like blah blah. And Bucky, I've got long stringy hair, whatever. And I loved WandaVision, and I was like, and the show has been so good. The ending, episode 4, when the other Captain America beats the guy to death with his shield, end of that episode, I was almost trembling. I knew it was happening, but between the audio, the sound that they had going on, and the shots, it was just visceral in a way that I was like, that's some of the best TV I've ever seen. So.
No, 100%. And so for me, it was again from the outset, I was like, oh, I wanted to see Bucky as Captain America. That was a great comic book. I really loved, that entire series. But then, after the first episode, I was like, okay, never mind. I'm fine. I'm going to watch this. Yeah. And then by the time the last episode came, I was like, yeah!
Yeah, I do like they're managing to take all this inspiration from Marvel Comics that the comics fans know, but then they do new stuff with it. With WandaVision, I was like, all right, they're doing House of M. And then it was not House of M.
Oh, that's exactly what I thought. Right. Exactly what I thought. When they had Pietro, when he showed up from the alternate universe, right? And I was just like, oh my goodness, they're gonna do no more mutants. She's gonna do the House of M. She's gonna create mutants. She's gonna do this whole, and then it turned into something else entirely. I was like, but also,
I was a little. I was thought that was going to be their way to move the X-Men into the MCU.
Yep.
And that it was going to end up with we're going to have Wolverine sneaking in there at some point. It is going to turn out the mutants were out there the whole time. I don't know, but. Still think that could have been a good move, but they're not paying.
What are you going to do? We're not Kevin Feige, so we don't get to make those decisions.
All right. So before I wrap up, I know that you've just finished your website, so you can tell people. All this will be in the show notes, but if people want to find you online, where can they hunt you down? bearinthewoods.net. I have just finally finished my website. Not as finished as I want it to be, but I'll live. bearinthewoods.net. I'm planning on using it as kind of a blog, but also throwing up some story stuff on there, kind of keeping people apprised of progress I'm making on some other stories and things like that. So they can find me there. You can also find me on Twitter at OSTBear
on Twitter, and yeah, those are the main socials that I'm using right now.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So that's it for now. So again, for links for Darius's social media and websites, you can see the show notes below. And you can find Darius's writing in both Achten Tan, Land of Dust and Bone, and Under New Suns, which are on sale now and on our website. And you can actually buy our books and read his stories at skullgatemedia.com, as well as Smashwords, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, or support your local bookstore and ask them to order our books for you. You can read about our publishing collective and future projects here at skullgatemedia.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel and our podcast of the same name, Sounds from the Year Between, and wherever you find your audio addictions. Don't miss our updates and content. Sign up for our newsletter or follow us on Twitter at Skullgate Media. And I'll see you in 2 weeks. So Darius, thanks so much for talking with me.
Thank you for having me, Chris. We